So this segment, there's a really interesting article from lawfaremedia.org. I thought it kind of speaks to the moment, right? Because you and I have been working on some of the PSAs around AI voice scams, and I've been thinking about constantly voice scams and how we try to understand like what's real and what's fake, because that's going to create and does create a lot of tension in the world, because I can take a voice that I've trained to sound like you and I can make you say anything I want if I get a really good voice clone. And that can cause lots of problems. I mean, there was a story a while back about a principal that was framed because he severed the job of a custodian that was there. The custodian got really mad, created an audio of this principal doing this racist tirade that, of course, rippled out into the community and caused lots of problems. And so this article came across, and it's from Lawfare, and it says AI-generated voice evidence poses dangers in court. And you're like, yeah, no kidding, right?
No way.
Because as we all think about like the court dramas that we see, there's regular witnesses and then there's expert witnesses. And I didn't see a lot in this article about expert witness testimony that might be brought in to talk about whether this might be synthetic or not. But what their main point was, the law as it is today doesn't really account well for AI voices. And it says specifically in the Federal Rules of Evidence, Rule 901 states the following, that evidence satisfies the requirement for admissibility if it is an opinion identifying a person's voice, whether heard firsthand or through mechanical or electrical transmission or recording. So whether you heard somebody say it out of their mouth or in a recorded fashion, like on a videotape or audio tape or something else. It says, based on hearing the voice at any time under circumstances that connect it with the alleged speaker. So what they're basically saying is, if I hear this and I think it sounds like you, then that's good enough to get it admitted into evidence.
Really?
So yeah, so they'll have the recording, and then they'll call up somebody that's a friend of Mason and say, let me play this for you. Does that sound like Mason to you? Yeah, that sounds just like Mason to me. Okay, that's admitted into evidence.
Oh boy. Okay.
And so it goes on, it says, the rule presumes that this evidence will be, quote, sufficient to support a finding that the item is what the proponent claims that it is.
So they basically, that if someone says, I'm sure that is them, that is enough for that to be considered like closed. It's evidence, not case closed, but like,
yeah, it's evidence. And as the opposing counsel, you can try to dismantle that bit of evidence and dismantle the credibility of it. But as far as it being part of the record, it's there, and it's been attested to as seeming authentic by somebody who's credible, that understands what your voice sounds like.
That's not great.
Yeah.
That's very obviously bad.
They have this pivotal paragraph here. It says, in the age of artificial intelligence, which automatically makes it sound like an AI generated paragraph. But
yeah, for real.
I guess they're also having to get their point across, so this may be the most efficient way to write it, even if a human did. In the age of artificial intelligence, this presumption is no longer tenable. The Evidence Rulemaking Committee should amend the rules and make the enumerated example in Rule 901B permissive, not mandatory. So it kind of at the judge's discretion whether they let that in.
What does that mean exactly? That lost me a little bit.
Permissive rather than mandatory. So if somebody was on the stand and they said, yes, that sounds like Mason, it would automatically be entered into evidence. If it's permissive, then it's kind of at the judge's discretion based on other factors that come in. So it may not be part of the record if it was discredited.
Interesting. So I imagine that other pieces of evidence, other kinds of evidence fall under that sort of same thing, right? Like artifacts of other kinds that like someone says, this is theirs, but the judge could say, I don't really think that's theirs.
Yeah. It says this example should illustrate that circumstances may satisfy the authentication requirement while still leaving the judge's discretion to exclude an item of evidence if there is other proof that it is fake. So if somebody were to show like a deepfake detector that says this is obviously fake, then that shouldn't be part of the record. And you shouldn't have those words in that voice in a jury's head all the time type of thing.
Yeah, because
it makes it feel real. Because if it felt real enough for the witness to go, yeah, that sounds like Mason, well, then it can feel real enough to the jury or to somebody else as that starts to leak out there more and more.
Yeah,
and I want to show you. Oh, go ahead.
That's just such a low bar to clear. And also, like, even if it does get shot down as like not being true, if it's impactful enough into the mind of the jury, like that's distressing.
Yeah. And so what I want to do real quick is show you how easy it is to pass muster in one of these tools as far as saying that something that I know is synthetically created is actually real. So
you're gonna beat a deepfake detector?
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm getting at. So I'll let you hear a version of this that is real. And this is Lisa from the National Cybersecurity Alliance talking.
So you're using 11 Labs deepfake detector.
Right. And so this file that I just put in is a real clip of Lisa Peigemeyer, the executive director for the National Cybersecurity Alliance. I just pulled that audio from YouTube, put it into 11 Labs, and it says, like you would expect, it's very unlikely that this audio was generated with 11 Labs or the audio was manipulated. Almost everybody forgets this second part of it, right? So now let me upload a different bit of audio into that. And I'm going to do a bit of audio that was generated in 11 Labs. And we'll see that it will probably detect this one because I've not done anything after. Yeah, probability 98%.
Okay, so that was
generated in 11 Labs.
Straight up 11 Labs output that you just put in.
Yes, that was a straight up unmodified 11 Labs output. And then this other one that I'm going to put in is generated in 11 Labs, but I brought it in and did some post-production stuff on it.
So 98% identified the one that was faked, just raw. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I was able to do a little bit of post-production and get it back down to 2%. So let me show you real quick what I did to get that result. Here is a real clip of Lisa that I pulled from her speaking at a conference, so you can get an idea of what she sounds like.
Stupid things that we do as humans that can cause disruption to society and loss of life. And years later, we look back with our pride and our hindsight and say, boy, they were really dumb.
So for this model, I pulled audio from that, put that into 11 Labs the same way Mason did, and created a promo of her selling crypto coin.
Oh, boy.
And so I get into it. So you can, if you're watching, you can see I've got her speaking in the corner and I've got like a slide deck over to the side of her. And I'll let you hear the audio of this. This is the one that 11 Labs said was 2% likely of being fake.
If you asked me 5 years ago if I'd be on a stage telling you about how I'm backing a new crypto coin, I'd have probably said you were crazy. But here we are.
Pretty real, right?
Wow, that sounds very real.
If you're watching this, you'll see this big layer of audio that I put in there. And that layer of audio is just background noises, actually from like a museum lobby. So there's crowd noise in that. It's turned down. I also put a lot of reverb on her voice to make it sound like she's in a bigger room. And then these other little tracks that you see here, if you're able to look at it, it says cough.
Yeah.
So I've got some people every now and then like coughing and sniffing in the background. It's turned down really low. The reality is all that it took to get it to that 2% was this main background track that I put in there.
Not surprised.
And it added enough disruption to do that. And I will say this is past not only 11 Labs muster, but several others that I put it through. So I guess the biggest thing that I would say is whether you're in a court of law or whether you're in the court of public opinion, even if a deepfake detector says that it's 100% authentic, or that there's 0% or 2% likelihood that it was generated in that thing, doesn't necessarily mean that it hasn't been artificially generated. It just means that the detector hasn't found it easily. So if I was listening to an expert witness and somebody said, well, I ran it through a deepfake detection software, or 3 of them, and it came out as probably being real. Well, the probably being real is the qualifying phrase there. It did not come out as being real. Nobody can make that assertion right now. Mm-hmm. And I might also be able to doctor real footage and have fingerprints of AI enough that a deepfake detector might pick up on that, because if I use AI noise removal, and actually if I was the expert witness on the other side and somebody said, well, this is showing up as very likely deepfake generated, and I wanted to argue that it was authentic, I'd say, well, there was music and there was sound. How did they make sure that was true? And they'd be like, well, we ran it through a music removal algorithm and a sound restoration process. And it's like, well, those were AI, and we know that those also regenerate audio as part of it. So how do you know that you didn't actually create the artifacts that you're seeing in these detectors?
Right. Right. Or even claim that at the source you used one of those for like a banal purpose, like noise reduction or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So I think reasonable doubt is going to be a big thing, right? And the liar's dividend, and the fact that people just won't know what's real or be able to credibly state what's real, for sure.
But on the flip side of that, when things don't matter if they're real in the entertainment world, it just matters that they're good or real enough or entertaining enough. We should investigate whether or not AI can pass the court of public opinion there. There's a great video that we're going to show a little bit of to see if AI could just make The Simpsons, if Hank Azaria did it. Stick around for that.
This is the FAIK Files.